Hi everyone, if you are new to my channel, welcome. I am glad to have you here with me. If you have not yet subscribed and you think that you want to, then you can click on the subscribe button. To my subscribers, thank you for the support. Please do continue to support. So today I will be sharing a story or testimony, right? In the series I don't look or smell like what I've been through. Guys, I've been through a lot. Like some of you know me and you know that I have been through a whole lot. Some of you know me, but you don't know half the stuff that I've been through. So one day I was reflecting on where God has brought me from, brought me through, and is still bringing me through. And the thought, I don't look or smell like what I've been through, came into my mind. And then Daniel 3, verse 26 to 27 came back to remembrance. I was asking God what testimony to share for a few days now, and so I believe this was the answer to that question. Right? So most of us, we are familiar with the story of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They refused to bow, and so they were thrown into the fiery furnace. And even though they were thrown into the fiery furnace, they were in there, walking around. They believed that God would deliver them. And so they were in the fire walking around. And someone said that they saw another man in the fire that looked like the Son of God. And so they came out of the fire, and the Bible said that their hair was not scorched with the fire, and they didn't even smell like the smoke. Right? What a God we have. So there are some of us out there like myself who we've been through so much, and if you don't tell people what you have been through, then they just won't know. Or if God don't reveal it to them, then they just won't know. Even when you're going through your struggles, people sometimes they cannot tell because you just don't look like what you're going through. You're going through, but it just doesn't show. Like you would have some people who, they live in a poverty stricken kind of life, and when you look at them, you see poverty. When you walk near them, the stench of poverty is on them. But there are some of us that no matter what we're going through, you just cannot tell. So I know that I don't look like what I have been through. I will be speaking specifically about sexual abuse and how I was delivered. I will refrain from calling names or being too vivid with my descriptions because I have forgiven these persons and they had moved on with their lives. As a little girl, maybe about 6 years old, I was exposed to sexual abuse. I remember an older female making sexual advancement at me as a child. I think she was in her teenage years at the time. We were staying with her relatives, so she was a relative. Throughout my childhood days, I had moved from one location to the next because my mother was a young single mother who was just trying her best to ensure that she and her children could survive. And so we moved to another location. From that location where the female was making advancement, we moved from that location to another location. And I can recall, while there, and my mom was, building up a house, a bird structure. I can recall sitting on a man's lap, He was a friend of my mother, of course. I was a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And when I say friend, I mean like literal friend. I don't think they were involved, right? So he was a friend of hers. And yeah, I was about 7 or 8 years old. So certain things I was not expecting. Anyways, I felt this man's manhood brushing me a certain way. So I got out of his lap. Might I add that at that age I was very much aware of good touch and bad touch. When he left, I told my mother what had happened, and her response was, "Where say?" I didn't repeat myself because of the tone that it came with. I don't even know if she thought I was lying or if she was upset about the situation. I just don't know. But I'm assuming that maybe she confronted him because he never came back to our home. Like, I never see him back. And so I tried a long life's journey until relatives came into my house, and they made sexual advancements in a playful way. I ignored those things and said not a word to anyone. However, I had an encounter where I had to speak out, and this time it was from a friend of the family, right? So this guy was touching me in all kind of way, and he almost took my clothes off. I managed to fight him off, and I tried to get loud so that others could hear, and so eventually he left. I told my mother about the incident, and she confronted the guy and his mother. But then guess what he did? Yep, he denied it. So most of the times these people, when they do stuff, they deny it. So he denied it. After that, I faced terrible rejection. Others heard about it, and I was labeled as a liar. At that time, I didn't have cable TV. As a little child growing up, cable TV was, kind of like a luxury thing. But I didn't have cable TV. But persons in the community had. And so I would go over to the neighbor's house along with other children to watch cable TV. After the incident, we were going to watch TV by the neighbor's house, and I didn't get to go inside. The neighbor said she didn't want me to tell any lies on her son, and she closed her door. So for days, I had to stay by myself while the other children watched cable. Funny enough, I saw him one day when I was coming from work. I was about 19 years old at the time, and he walked beside me and was telling me all the things that a man would tell a woman when he wants her. In the midst of the conversation, here the man, after me, people, when you know who start get angry inside. In that very instance, I took a trip down memory lane, and I remembered how he denied this thing. The guy literally, Jamaican people that say he take God off of the cross, say he never do it. But now at this age, he's telling me that from me a little girl, it want do to me. Anyways, the time came again when my mother had to relocate, and while on our quest to secure a home, she met a man. He soon started coming around, helping out in the home and stuff. By this time, I was about 9 years old. He would look at me a certain way or say things that give me an idea of what his motives were, but I kept silent and observant. So one night, we all went to bed. By this time, he was now sleeping over. One bed, and all three of us slept on it. And so he started touching me the wrong way, and I got loud about it. Thankfully, my mother saw it and she addressed the situation. However, he was still coming by the house, and by this time, his eyes were on another teenage girl who was a friend of my family. She was pretty much labeled as bad because, in Jamaican lingo, she had a real long time. She had, they would have said, yeah, you had the road from your idea, your knee, that kind of thing. Yeah. So he took her to some place far in his vehicle, and they attempted to rape her, and she had to run for her dear vagina, for her dear life. He knew she was labeled as a bad child, and so he tricked her and made her believe that he was going to help her. And then he used the fact that she was already exposed to sex to try to justify what he had done. That's when the relationship between he and my mother ended. So yeah, I didn't have to worry about that kind of person anymore. Things were not always okay in my home, and so I always sought a way to escape. Maybe that wasn't the best solution, but from time to time I would go to visit and stay with persons who I considered to be relatives. And on one of these occasional visits, something happened that scarred me for years. I was now 10 years old. Another sexual encounter, but this time it wasn't on the surface like the others. This time I felt pain, I felt agony, I saw blood on my underwear, I saw blood on my shirts, the sheets, the mattress. I saw blood running down my legs. I cried. I felt empty. I felt broken. I felt nasty. I felt like a part of me was gone and I didn't know where to find me back. I washed my underwear in a basin of water and all I could see in that basin was blood. I was angry, not just at myself, but also at the person who did this to me. Um, I was asked not to say anything to anyone, and so I tried not to say anything to anyone. Anyways, I had always dreamed, I dreamt about getting married before sex, but right there, I felt like my dreams were shattered. Only God knew how I was feeling at that moment. That morning, he cooked tin mackerel and rice. And when I looked at that tin mackerel, all I could see in my head was blood. I lashed out. I was angry. I became rebellious. And after a while, it started to show in my behavior. I love to write, and I had a journal, but I just could not write about that stuff. I could not talk about it. I had to be dealing with it on my own. And that was, the only way that I saw fit at that time to express myself. I didn't even recognize that I was doing it, but it was happening. And when I thought about talking about it, because there were times when I thought about talking about it, but then thoughts would run through my mind, and thoughts like maybe you'll deny it, and everyone will think I'm a liar because now the evidence were all gone. Well, at least that is what I thought, because I didn't know anything about doctor's examination for that kind of situation. Because I know, like, if something happen like that, you can take the child to the doctor and they do the examination to see if anyone, actually fondled with the child, if, if a man actually did, insert his penis into the child, or if he used his finger, and they could check around for sperm or stuff like that. But it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I understood these things, that because at the primary level there's certain information at that time that you were not exposed to in schools until you get to a higher level. So I didn't talk about it because I was thinking about that, right? And I also thought about what the entire community would be, would be saying. They would be able to identify me and say, why at a girl there, them say she him rape her, and them have to take her out to the community because she had a life on him. I wondered if his family would believe, because in Jamaica, like, there's this stigma, I think, that if you go through sexual abuse, if you are raped and stuff like that, people will have things to say. Is that they're not compassionate towards the person who was a victim of this thing. You know, people tend to tear you down, they label you, they look at you with some bad ways. Some people will tell you that you're a bad pick me, and how you go around the man, and how you make the man do whatever to you and stuff like that. So all of those things were going through my mind, because yes, at that age I I would have seen where things happen to people, and this was how they treated them. And of course, one of my experiences where the guy, he lied about it and people started rejecting me. One of the next thing that I thought about was, if if my father hear about it, what he would what would he do? Probably he would attack somebody. So all of those things were going through my mind. Anyways, I carried on, and it was hard. It was really, really hard. As I said before, I felt like my dreams were shattered. I really wanted to reserve my virginity until marriage. That's what I always dreamt of. I remember sitting in my grade 4 classroom and being unable to function. All I could remember was what had happened. At one point, they had to move me to a slower class because I had stopped doing both classwork and homework. I was already an aggressive child, and I became more aggressive. I started avoid going to that house. I only went there when it was necessary. Yeah, so I stopped going there. Uh, After a while, things got sour in my home, and so I had to go and stay with relatives again. And here comes trouble again. By this time, I had made up in my mind that I will defend myself no matter what. And so, it, at this place where I was staying, one person tried to pull me in, but I acted quickly. Another one came through friends of the family to visit and wrote all kind of love letters expressing how he felt about me, and I kept my distance. I got angry too, all in the name of protecting me. Another person engaged me in a conversation, and what started off as playing until he started touching me. Mind you, this is a relative now, so certain things are, you know, even though the persons are, it's normally persons who are close to me who try to do these things. I just was not expecting it from this particular person. So yeah, of course he come. We were having a conversation. We were being playful and all that. Of course, he was way older than I was. He was an adult. I was a teenager, and this person was touching me a certain way, and before I knew it, his mouth was all over my breast because he pinned me down on the bed a certain way. So his mouth was all over my breast and his eyes were rolling over, and I hit him as many times as I could, and I begged him to stop, but he kept going until all I could see was the white in his eyes. So apparently, him did I enjoy something, and I told him that I would get loud if him not stop this, if him not let me go and just go on. So I started calling out, I started to get loud, I started to call for somebody because we were in a room by ourselves. There were other rooms, but I think there was just one other person there. But this person would not know what was happening because we were in different rooms. So I started calling for that person rather, and I started getting loud, and that was when he let me go. And after that, and all of this that I'm telling you happened at this location. After that, another person, started telling me what he wanted to do with me, and this person was a Christian. Yep, he started telling me what he wanted to do, and of course my wall of defense was up. and so I just would not have it. And man, I never ever have it after what I encountered. That thing that scarred me, that thing that made me feel, worthless, like a piece of my gun. I felt ashamed. Yeah, after that, I just put up my wall of defense and I just would not have it. I not take it from nobody else. Anyways, I returned to live with my mother and I ended up seeing the person who I had the encounter with when I was 10 years old. Right, so this was the person who, you know, um, gave me thin mackerel in the morning after doing what he did with me. So I saw him and he made his sexual comments. He looked at me, how man look at woman when them waffle, yeah. He looked at me that way and he attempted to repeat what he had done. Defensive me would not allow it. So years passed by, I became an adult, I got saved, and I thought that everything was okay. But each time I saw him, it's like I went into this anger zone. I was very angry. And so I started questioning God. I prayed much about it too. I asked God to deliver me. I asked him to heal me. One day while I was in praise and prayer, I realized that I had to forgive him, and so I confronted him and let him know that I let him know I was hurting. I let him know how I felt about the situation and how it was affecting me. And so he expressed that he too was hurting and was sorry for her. He said that he was sorry for what had happened. However, the time came when I was about to get what seemed like a big opportunity, and this person somewhat caused the opportunity to be jeopardized. He said things about me that weren't exactly true, and I was confronted by the person who had the upper hand where that opportunity was concerned. I felt like I got a proper cusset for something that was not entirely true. And of course, this person had no idea why things turned out that way. I was hurting, and so I went back to God about the situation. And that's when God told me that I can't see and know that I have forgiven someone and the person doesn't know. So I contacted him and I told him that I had forgiven him. And then that was when he started telling me stuff like, I realized that you don't come by the house as often, or when other persons come by I don't see you come, and I realized that you were hurting, stuff like that, things that he observed, based on my behavior. But it would be easy for him to observe that because he knew what had happened. Other persons might have seen this and think that, oh, probably she go on like she better than we know, so she not come, or maybe she in a malice with stuff like that. But he knew exactly what was happening, and so he expressed all of that, and he knew I was hurting, and so we talked things over, we settled the thing, and we were good. I of course let him know that, all right, this is a testimony in itself, so don't worry yourself. God has gotten the glory out of it. I've seen persons get saved because of this testimony, and there's a possibility that you will hear about it, right? It's not that I want to rub it in his face or stuff like that, but then what I believe, what I have been through, God get the glory from it. And somebody who is going through, when they hear this, they can know that, listen, they can overcome, because if God can deliver me, then he can deliver somebody else. So some may ask, how do I know that I have truly forgiven him? I know because when I see him, hear his voice or hear others talk about him, I don't remember the incident, and I don't burst with anger when I see him. Forgiveness is important. As children of God, we are to forgive. The Bible says that we should forgive 70 times 7. It can be hard depending on the situation, but forgiveness brings about healing and it brings about peace. So it is good to forgive. Forgive for your sake. Forgive for your healing. Forgive for your peace. Forgive others so that God can forgive you. Because there are going to be times when we are going to do stuff and we're going to need other person's forgiveness. So forgive others.